courses, the point of the warnings is to get us to cry out to God. That's the point. God's not angry with the world, but he's put stars in the sky, he's done all these things, and people still think that he doesn't exist. That it's not him. This all just happened accidentally. Atoms that came from nowhere were just swirling in space and decided to explode one day and create a bunch of planets and stars and moon. Because man doesn't want to believe there's a God. If there's a God, then we have to listen to him. And we don't want to listen to him. People want to do their own thing. And so if there's a God, and even on Judgment Day, to your shock, people will be looking right in God's face and still won't want to worship him. They will want to do their own thing because they don't want there to be a God. That means that he's in control and he has to tell us what to do and we have to obey him. There are church members who don't want there to be a God. Because that would mean you'd have to give up control and do what God wants you to do instead of what you want to do. So we often tell God what to do in our prayers. We don't understand that it's the opposite. That the whole purpose of prayer is for us to find out what God wants. And so, since we won't believe in him, he puts us in a position where we have to cry out to him. So that's why he says, I'll be sending famine, I'll be sending all these things, so that you'll be forced to cry out. Those people who are already crying out, they don't suffer the same way. So if I'm a teacher, you're students, and you're already studying, if you go home every night and you study, when I give the test, it's nothing to you. I had a method of studying. I took a class on how to study. So when I was studying to become a teacher, I would read the chapter before the teacher taught on it. So on the first day of school, you should have already read chapter 1 before school starts. So when the teacher says, open to chapter 1, it's all now familiar to you. That's why most of you are nodding all the time when I'm teaching, because you've already read the Bible. So when I'm teaching, some of you are, oh, yeah. It's not if you've never read it before, all this is confusing. But if you've read the Bible before, when somebody starts teaching on it, you go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, oh, now I get it. It all makes sense. So I would always read a chapter before the teacher taught on it. And then after he taught on it, me and some other students, we would go and we would study what he taught. Right afterwards, right after class, we'd go that night and go over it. And the next week we'd do the same thing, except we would do a secret. We would study chapter 1 and chapter 2. Then the next week we would study chapter 1, 2, and 3. The next week we would study 1, 2, 3, and 4. By the time we got to the final, we had already reviewed 20 times. So they gave us a 2-hour final and I was done with it in 20 minutes. And the rest of the class. But I've been preparing all along. I didn't wait until the final. It's fun to wait until that week and cram. Try to cram 500 pages of books. I was already prepared. So I had nothing to do. I was like, well, this was so easy. And because I was prepared. So if we are prepared when God comes, it'll be nothing. We won't go through all the stuff that everybody else is going through. The stress and the anguish is for people who are not prepared, who haven't been paying attention. So a lot of the stuff that we're reading about in the Revelations will not affect us because we're already on God's side. We're already listening. We already know the warning signs. It's going to affect the people who are not listening. Does that make sense? Okay. So, we read about the 7 seals. Again, there's 3 sevens. There's 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls. And so I'm just going to review what we went to last week, and then we'll go forward from there. So now there are 7 trumpets that have been sounding. The first 4 trumpets sound, and those are God's warning. He always sends warning, and then he uses somebody to get the Jews. He would always send warning, 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 and then he'd use the Babylonians to get them. He'd send warning, 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 and then he would use the Greeks to get them, or the Syrians, right? Or the Egyptians. So I'm warning you, I'm warning you, I'm warning you, you didn't listen. Now I'm going to use those people who are not my people, but I'm going to use them to get you. Okay, so if God's warning, sometimes you use the police to give you a ticket, right? God sent that policeman. Warning. God sent that judge. God sent that teacher. God sent that whoever, right? Okay, so someone read Revelation chapter 8, verse 12 through 13.
Then the fourth angel sounded, and the third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and the third of the star, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night.
So we'll see more signs in the heavens of days where the sun won't shine, the moon won't shine, there'll be darkness, there'll be changes in the climate, changes in the temperature. We'll see more of that as we get closer. All of these things used to happen every 300 years and every 200 years and every 100 years, and now they're just happening every year. There's tornadoes and storms and stuff. It's just constant now. It's just the new normal. Huge fires going on. So he's saying, so as we get closer to the time, it will increase. But these are the warning signs. Verse 13.
And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who were about to sound. And it was the same thing in the seven seals. The first four were just general warnings of different things that are going to afflict the earth. The last three were different. And number 7 is, number 6 with the seals is a period called the Day of God's Judgment. Some people call that the tribulation. So there's going to be 4 warning signs in the seals. Then he's going to send prophets to verbally warn. So first he's going to use the elements to warn us. Number 5, he's going to send prophets to verbally warn us. Number 6 is the day of judgment, when the armies will come against Israel. And then number 7 is the millennium. Jesus shows up at the end of the 6th. And he puts an end to it all. And the 7th is what the period that we call the millennium, where Jesus is ruling on the earth. So that's how the 7 seals played out. And you'll see how that's how the 7 trumpets play out. The first 4 are just general warnings, but the last 3 are different. Okay, so number 5, the 5th trumpet.
Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star falling from heaven to the earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit.
So this is actually a person, a spirit. It's not actually a star. A star is not alive. It says, to him was given the key. He saw like a spirit. And John is seeing this into the spirit realm. He's seeing the spirit behind the person. So this star comes from heaven, and he's going to let out the key to the bottomless pit. Go ahead.
Then out of the smoke, locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power.
So I believe that this is, again, now the armies are being unleashed against Israel. Every time you see the word earth, know that it really should have been translated land. They just translated earth for some reason. But the Bible tends to talk about the land and the sea. The land is the Jews, and the sea would be the people, the Gentiles, the rest of the world. I'm going to make you fishers of men. And Jesus would use the imagery of they're all out there in the sea, and you're going to go and you're going to bring, right? And so he talks about the land, Israel, and then everything else. And so this person, he's going to come, and we'll see from the sea, from these other countries, they're going to come and start to invade. Now, did you read about the locusts? Right? Oh, yes. So I told you last year my theory. This is just my theory. The Bible doesn't say this. But I don't believe that they're actually going to be locusts as big as horses that have an iron. Yes, sir? Oh, okay. The way the locusts are described, they have wings that sound like 1,000 horses.
chariots going into battle. They have the face of a man and body armor, basically, and they're like horses. And so God has every right to create a locust that's as big as a horse that's wearing armor with the face of a man. You can do it with the tail of a scorpion that's shooting out fire and brimstone. I think it's one of those big military helicopters that looks like a locust, that's as big as a horse, that's made out of iron, that has someone in it flying it. So that's why because John is very specifically describing it. This is not a metaphor. He wants you to know it had the face of a man, and its wings were loud, and it was big like a horse. And but he's describing it. It's not just and a horse went out. He's so specific because he wants us to know what it looks like. So to me, I showed you pictures last week. To me, it could be that. But either way, these are the armies now attacking Israel. So they come like locusts. So whether they're just a bunch of locusts or it's a bunch of aerial blast, then either way, Israel's now being attacked. In the sixth trumpet, oh, you have a question or a comment?
I was going to say what you said.
Oh.
Because I watched the movie. I'm sitting here and it will not come back to memory. But it was a movie about the last days, and it showed the helicopters. And I was teaching a class at the time, and I put that up, and I said, "What is that?" And they're like, "Helicopters." I said, "Think about the locusts. They look like locusts, and everybody was
Right. Right, so I have pictures, but we could be wrong. It could be giant locusts as big as horses. I'm good with that. Either way, it's not attacking me, so I'm okay. So, but that's just my theory. But either way, it's not going to attack us. So, Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 and verse 15. I'm just reviewing. Yes. Go ahead.
The fourth angel who had been prepared for the hour and the day and the month and the year was released to kill the third mankind.
Now it says mankind, but again, that's just man. I don't know why they're calling it mankind. I think it's just the men in Israel. I mean the people in Israel. It doesn't mean all the earth. But you can go ahead. Keep reading.
Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 250. I heard the number of.
So now you see a ground attack. They could be riding horses. We could just switch back and everybody's in horses. Or these could be armored vehicles that John would have described as horses because he, of course, had never seen a tank before or a mechanical thing. But there's hundreds of millions of them that are all coming on land. You have to imagine them coming toward Israel. They're, as opposed to going across the ocean to attack America or South America. They seem to be all, we'll see later, that they're all concentrated and they're all coming toward Israel. So, this is all about the Middle East. And so there's an aerial attack. So the armies are now being released. There's warning, 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 and now the physical armies are being released to attack. And then I think we got to the seven thunders last week, Revelation chapter 10, verse 1 through 4.
I saw still another one angel coming down who had clothes with a cloud and a rainbow in his face was like the sun, and his feet were like pearls of fire. He had a little book open in his hand, and he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land, and cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roars. When he cried out, 700
Uttered.
uttered their voices. Now, then the seven
Thunders.
uttered their voice. I am about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven, and he sealed up the things which the seven
So, like there were 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, there were 7 thunders. He says, no, don't write that down. So John sees something that he can't tell us about. There's no reason to guess what it was. But there's something that happens around this time that's very specific, around the time of Israel being attacked by the nations that are attacking it, that would give too much away, maybe, if he told us about it. So he says, no, do not write that. We got to the 2, yes, sir?
Oh, it says that angel, but could that be Jesus? Because, I mean, it describes Jesus as having, face like a sun and feet like pillars of fire. And it describes Jesus in
That's possible. That's possible that this is describing when Jesus comes back. He's not part of the judgment. He's not part of the armies that are marching. So maybe the 7th, maybe it's Jesus, and he's describing specifically the Armageddon, that day that Jesus returns in the sky. So that's possible. We don't. Yeah. So your guess is as good as mine. Now, Revelation chapter 11, the 2 witnesses. That's actually where we ended last week.
Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood saying, rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship it. But leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles.
Right. So the idea about a measuring rod is that God is measuring this space, and he's saying, this is protected. That is not. So I'm protecting this, but the rest has been given to the Gentiles. Now, some people speculate that this means that there will be a temple built in Jerusalem, because he's saying measure the temple. And that's possible. I believe that God is not interested in rebuilding the temple, that he purposely destroyed it because he wanted it destroyed, because there's no longer a use for the temple. We are now the temple, and so and the purpose of the temple was for the animal sacrifice. That you walked in and you made the animal sacrifice, and then you offered up the prayers. Oh, okay. Then you offered up. You burned the incense, you did all those things that were symbolic of prayer, symbolic of praise, but he doesn't want us to symbolize it anymore, right? We're supposed to pray. We're supposed to, and certainly he doesn't want animal sacrifice anymore. So I don't know what actually would go on in the temple. The temple is different than the synagogue. The synagogue is like a church with seats where people get up and speak and talk. The temple was simply there for the sacrifice. It didn't have another purpose. They didn't hold service in the temple. Do you understand? In the synagogues, we hold service, but in the temple, it was different. So I'm not clear why God would want to reinstitute. If he's trying to teach them about Jesus, why to try to? So I think the temple is symbolic of his people that he has chosen. There will be 144,000 Jews. Now that number may just be symbolic, but there'll be Jews from each tribe. And again, 12 is the number for man, meaning that's the complete number for man. 12 disciples, there were 12 children of Israel. That 12 just means a symbolic number, meaning this is complete. These are all people. So all the people that God is protecting, all the people, all the Jews that he has called, who eventually will see Christ, and they will believe, and they will witness during this tribulation. He's protecting them. So when the armies come to attack, he'll have a group of Jews there who will become believers, who won't be attacked, who won't be harmed. So I think that's who he's protecting, that the temple is symbolic of his people, But the rest of the unbelievers are susceptible to the attack. So, where did we leave off? I'm sorry, I started rambling.
And do not measure.
But tell me where we are. Oh, in Revelation 11, okay, 1 through 4. Right, now, you're finishing verse 1. Oh, verse 2, I mean.
Finishing verse 2.
Thank you.
For it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months.
That's 3.5 years. I'm sorry. So I hate myself. So 3.5 and 3.5. We remember Daniel and the last week of years. There were 7 years, and he divided it in half. The first 3.5 was Jesus witnessing. That Jesus' ministry was 3.5 years. So Jesus came and preached for 3.5 years, and then the last 3.5 years was when General Titus came and destroyed the temple. That's 3.5 and 3.5. So he's dividing it again. There'll be 3.5 years of the 2 witnesses who will be witnessing and preaching and prophesying, just like Noah did. There's always a prophet who comes and says, you shouldn't do this. And there are always the people who do not listen to the prophet. Always. Prophets are so shocked that people don't listen to them. Why won't they listen to me? Because they never listen. And then there's 3.5 years of actual war. So he's dividing it up. There will be 2 witnesses who will come and preach in Jerusalem, and everybody will see them. And then there will be 3.5 years of the invasion of Israel, where the armies will be fighting. There'll be a 3.5-year war. At the end of it, Jesus comes. So the city will be trampled down for 42 months. That's 3.5 years.
And I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days.
That's 3.5 years.
In sackcloth.
Go ahead. Revelation 7.
When they finish their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them, overcome them, and kill them.
So this is not the Kraken. It's not an actual beast that rises up. That's just symbolic. There will be the Antichrist. It will be a person, a man, who will have become a world leader at this point. People thought, oh, Hitler's the Antichrist, or Mussolini's that. There'll be somebody, like that, who a lot of people will follow. You only become a world leader if you have followers. So people will be fooled and say, yes, this person has all the answers. And they'll turn against the witnesses. They need to shut up and be quiet, because they're bugging him. They're making him mad. And he will eventually have them killed. And everybody will be, yay! I'm so glad they're gone. They were really making him mad. Okay, so the beast that is, it's not a beast, but it's symbolic, because the Bible has been describing the Antichrist from Ezekiel to Daniel on down as a beast. It's the spirit behind that person. It's not even really that person, it's the devil behind that person. But just like John preached just like Elijah, Jesus says they're the same. Elijah came and preached, and John came and preached. They're the same. It's not really John, it's the spirit behind John. So there's always a witness that will preach, and then there's always that Antichrist, that person, that Herod, who's saying, kill all the babies, right? Who are bugged by the preaching. Which one of the Herods? The first Herod, the second Herod? The second Herod. The second Herod got mad at John the Baptist, right? And it's the same thing. That's what I mean. That prophet says, you're wrong, you're horrible. And the king is always offended and says, kill that person. So it's that sort of thing. The witnesses will mostly be preaching against that world leader. And that world leader eventually will have them killed. So God always does the same thing. You can tell when it's God. It's the same pattern. Okay, so are you in Revelation chapter 11, verse 11? So they've been killed. He will overcome them and kill them. Now Revelation, verse 11 and verse 13. No, start with the verse 11. Uh-huh.
Now after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet. And great fear fell on those who saw them.
Repetition. Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days and he rose. For 3 days they're going to be in the street. Their bodies will be in the street. They're not even going to bury them. People are going to rejoice, send each other gifts. Yay, I'm so glad those people were gone. But they're like John the Baptist. They're making me nervous. They're saying I need to stop sinning, and they're saying. And they're going to rise and resurrect after 3.5 days. To some people, that'll be a great sign to them. To others, they'll say, well, they weren't really dead. They were just faking for 3.5 days. Because people always want to give an excuse for why they believe something is not God. So the witnesses, and God's just repeating himself, they're killed, and in 3.5 days, they'll rise. And they'll be taken up into heaven. People will see them taken up into heaven, and a lot of people will just say, oh, that's not real, that's fake. People in your community will say, that's not real, that's Hollywood and special effects. Like, okay. All right, go on in verse 13.
In the same hour, there was a great earthquake, and the tenth of the city fell. In the earthquake, 7,000 people killed, and the rest were afraid, and gave glory to God in heaven. The second
Whoa, it was passed.
passed, behold, the third was turned to.
Right, so now we're going to talk about the seventh trumpet. And the seventh trumpet is the day of, just like the seven seals, the seventh trumpet is now Jesus is coming back and he's reigning. It's that same thing happened with the seventh seal. It's happening now with the seventh trumpet. So the first four are always the warnings. 5 is the preacher who shows up and says, you need to stop. 6 are the armies coming on Israel. And then 7, Jesus shows up and his kingdom comes. Now he's done. I warned you. I even did something supernatural. Then I brought judgment, and now I'm here, and we're done. So, seventh trumpet, the kingdom is proclaimed. Someone else read verse 15.
Then the seventh angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders who sat before God on their throne fell on their faces and worshipped God, saying, we give you thanks, O Lord God Almighty, the one who is, and who was, and who is to come, because you have taken your great power and reign. The nations were angry, and your wrath has come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that you should reward your servants, the prophets, and the saints.
So I want to back up a little bit. So the 24 elders who sat before God, the 24 elders, just remind you, who do they represent? The 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 disciples. So you've got the beginning of the Jews and the beginning of the Gentile Christians. So he's saying 24, I mean, that's everybody. Whether you came in because you're one of the children of Israel and that's how you are part of this, or you came in because of the 12 apostles who went out and preached. However you came in, you're in this. We're represented in that number. So that's what the 24 elders just represent all of us. Now it says, the nations were angry, verse 19, and your wrath has come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged. Who are the dead?
Those who passed away without, accepting Jesus.
Yes, they'd be included. I think it's even bigger than that. But yeah, that's who would be included. I mean, we talk about it every day. Either you're alive in Christ or
you're dead. All those in the
So it's everybody. It's everybody, even if you're alive and on the earth when Jesus comes. If you haven't accepted him, you're considered to be dead. You're still spiritually dead. You never were made alive again. Because once we reject Christ, at whatever age that happens, we are now dead to him. Dead in the Bible, again, never means ceasing of life. It just always means separation. Separation. Even physical death, your spirit is separated from your body. But your spirit's still alive. Spiritual death is when we're separated from God. So we're considered the dead until we become alive again in Christ. So the dead will be judged. The dead who died, like he said, without knowing Christ, and even the dead who are alive on earth when he shows up. So there's, yes?
Doesn't he rule and reign on earth for 1,000 years though? So,
Yes.
I mean, how will, if they're already judged, then won't they be gone from the earth? So who, they'll just be
Oh, no. There will be, so whoever is alive on earth when Jesus comes and says, stop, right? There's a big war happening in Armageddon and all this, and then Jesus shows up and ends it. There are people all over the world who weren't there in Israel, but were watching the war on television. CNN is covering it. And they still don't necessarily believe in Jesus. So they won't die. They'll still be alive, but they're dead spiritually. Right? He's going to reign for 1,000 years, and there'll be people who he'll be reigning over who will not like him, who won't believe in him. So they're still dead. I'm calling them spiritually dead who are alive.
But I mean, there are going to be people born after Jesus starts ruling and reigning, so, and they won't.
And they will have to decide if they're going to like that or not. They'll still have a choice.
I guess I'm just confused because, you know, there's like the final judgment after, you know, 1,000 years, because then Satan is released, and, you know, there's another war, and they war on
Right.
Jerusalem, and then that's the final one where there's a new heaven and new earth created after that. So I'm saying, so even the people alive will be judged. This is why I'm confused, because then there'll be people born after that, so they're going to be constantly judged.
So you wanted to know if the great white throne judgment happens at the beginning of the millennial reign or at the end of it?
Yeah, 'cause I'm
At the end.
confused what this judgment is.
Right. So he's going to judge. I guess it's probably just the translation. The nations were angry, your wrath has come, and the time of the dead. The time of the dead has come, even though it's 1,000 years. The time has come. But they don't mean that it happens at the beginning of it. He says, now the time has come in general for that to ultimately happen, where they will be judged. But it doesn't mean at the beginning. Yes, sir?
And I think that shows the ultimate mercy of God, give him one more chance.
Right. And he's just saying the language makes it seem like the judgment happens at the beginning of the millennium. So does everybody know what the millennium is? Because some people are skipping ahead. That's how they are. Does everybody? So when Jesus comes back, there's still another 1,000 years. Oh, good. I'm telling you, when Jesus comes back to stop that war, which is really Armageddon 1, because there's an Armageddon Part 2. There's a sequel. There's always a sequel. So when he comes to stop the first war, he's then going to rule on earth for 1,000 years and give people even more time to repent.
Bless you.
At the end of that, then there's a war to end all wars. The real war to end all wars that will happen. That's actually led by Satan specifically, and not just his proxy, not just a man. But it's a final war. Again, that war lasts for 5 seconds. But that's when everybody on earth, not just the people in the Middle East, but everybody who was tired of Jesus ruling, because they just don't want to be, because if Jesus rules your life, then he gets to tell you what to do. Again, that's the struggle most Christians have, because they don't understand. Jesus tells you what to do. And we don't come to the altar and give up our lives anymore. We don't come to the altar and say, yes, I'm tired of I know my way doesn't work. I only want to do what you want. We just come and, ooh, I want to join this church that's got good music. We're just joining a country club. But that's not what becoming a Christian, it means we die. And then the life we now live is what he tells us to do, what he tells us to say. And people won't want to do that. There are church members who don't want to do that. So let alone people who, it's like, no, I want to make my own choices. Because when Jesus is literally here, he's really going to be telling everybody what to do. They won't like that. So shockingly, they'll be ready to overthrow him. At the end of that 1,000-year period called the millennium, they'll be ready to, and there'll be a huge war. When that's over, that's when there's the great white throne judgment. But he's saying, but the time of your judgment has come. But even judgment is always preceded by mercy. It's just that's just, so when he says, this is it. So I'm about to hand out the final exam, but let me give you all the answers. One more time, we're going to review one more time. All your teachers did that, right?
Good ones.
Huh?
The good ones.
The good ones did. But you know what I'm saying? It's tomorrow, so let's review one more time all the stuff. And people either paid attention, they went, oh God. Or they, you know, so that's up to but it's like, here's my mercy one more time, because the test is tomorrow and some people are going to fail. And you either listen or you don't, but it's always our choice. So he's saying the time of the judgment has come, but it doesn't literally mean they're going to be judged at the beginning of it. They're going to be judged at the end. Oh, okay, so you were so the dead should be judged, and that you should reward your servant. So the time has come finally, even though it's going to take 1,000 years before it happens, that those who have given their lives to Christ will get their rewards at the judgment seat of Christ. There's two lines. There's the judgment seat of Christ line, where we're just waiting in line to get our rewards, and they'll either get burned up, or they're all going to go through the fire. Everything we've done will go through the fire. And we're going to either come out with a bunch of ashes or a bunch of gold, or some ashes and some gold. That sounds more like it, right? So that's one line of rewards, and then there's one line of punishment. And that's called the Great White Throne Judgment. And the dead are in one line, and the dead in Christ are in one, and the live in Christ are in the other. And all those people, they have to stand in that line. They'll be judged according to their works also. But none of their works will stack up, right? And so when we count up, so then they'll say, is your name written in the book of life? Nope, sorry, all right, next. So 2 lines. So we want to be standing in the good line, obviously. All right, so they should reward your servants, the prophets, the saints, and those who fear your name, small and great, and should destroy those who destroy the earth. So I didn't want to make this, we have to be careful as Christians, because the destruction of the earth is a bad thing. Even though God is allowing it, we are doing things as a society that is destroying God's creation. We're allowing it to disintegrate, and we are protecting sometimes those as a church who are profiting from its disintegration. So there are companies, there are people who that's okay with them if what they're doing is polluting the earth or causing it to disintegrate. Even though it's God who's allowing it, we as Christians shouldn't support it, because it's judgment, right? So even though it's God, we can't just say, well, God's doing it, so why are we fighting it? We're supposed to fight it. We're not, we're supposed to say that's bad. We have to be the prophets that say this earth belongs to the Lord. We're supposed to take care of it, not watch it disintegrate. So those who are destroying the earth, we are destroying the earth we're destroying his creation, and his earth is a part of God. And so when we sin, whatever our sin is, it's a sin against nature and against God and against our fellow human. And so, and for people struggling with sin, when we get the revelation that every time we sin, it's hurting God, it's hurting ourselves, it's hurting other people. It's, even though we can't see it, and it's hurting the earth, even though we can't see it, that's what's happening. Then it's easier to resist when we understand the consequences of it. So he's going to destroy those who are destroying the earth through their sin. Through their sin. Now, verse 19, Josiah.
Then the temple of God was opened in heaven, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. And there were lightnings, noises, thunderings, an earthquake, and great hail.
Right. So then the final judgment. So he's done with the trumpets. And really, in a way, he's described it just more specifically than he did in the seals, when he let the 7 seals. Now here's the parenthesis. He wants to give us a picture of the church and the devil, the struggle that's gone on between the church and the devil. Not just the church, but his people. I'll say his people, beginning with the Jews and the devil. So he stops and says, let me just I'm going to stop here and tell you a little story so you'll get what's really going on. So we're starting beginning of Revelation chapter 12. The woman, the child, and the dragon.
Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars.
So here's a rhetorical question. What does the sun stand for? What does the moon stand for? What are the 12 stars? Rhetorical question, because we're going to answer it. We talked about this, Ollie.
I know you did.
Bible study on Wednesday.
Same thing.
Okay, so the sun, the moon, and the stars. Someone reading this back in the Old Testament times, they already know what these mean. The sun, the moon, and the stars. So let's look at the sun. Malachi chapter 4, verse 2.
But to you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall arise with healing in his wings, and you shall go out and grow fat like stall-fed calves.
So to you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. He equates, who is this probably? Right. Jesus or God, right? Probably not Oprah. It's probably Jesus or God. Will rise with healing in his wings. And so the sun is symbolic of God and how when he rises, it makes the crops to grow and it heals it. We need to get more sun because, if you're sick, sometimes they make you go stand outside and the sun heals you. Right? You know that, right? It's like, I need to get outside and get in some sunlight. And there's some qualities in the sun that actually brings healing to you. So it's called the Son of Righteousness. This is not the S-O-N, but the S-U-N. Will rise, and you will go out and grow like stall-fed calves. And there's several times in the Bible, I just picked this one, where God or Jesus is referred to as the sun. So if God is the sun, what is the moon? Okay, some of you know you're not saying you've been trained well, finally. Hallelujah. Don't just raise his hand. No, you can't answer. Let's find out what it is. You can only answer if you don't know. Okay, Psalm 89, verse 33 through 37.
If his sons forsake my law and do not walk in my judgments, if they break my statutes and do not keep my commandments, then I will punish their transgression with the rod and their iniquity with stripes.
So what's the subject of what he's talking about? What does he want them to do? Obey what? My law, my commandments. Literally what I've laid out for you. Because you don't understand what sin is, right? When he led them out of Egypt and brought them to that mountain, smoke and fire on the mountain, lightnings and thundering, and they sat and made a calf and started, it's like they didn't even understand. It's like, you don't get what sin is. What is wrong with you people? But there was, no one had ever written it down and said, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And if you don't write it down, people don't know. If any of you have raised boys,
Some girls.
okay, but especially boys, don't understand, like I to this day don't understand germs. To this day. My wife's always making me, wash your hands. Oh, okay. Before I do things, like, I think my hands have just stayed clean. They look clean to me. It's like, no, you've been out in the world, right? I don't get it. But I always have to watch my, but you're handling this, and so the women are like, what's wrong with you? But I don't get it because I'm a boy. And the boys don't, that's why you can, I brought Kentucky Fried Chicken to my boys. And so much grease, it fell into I was out in the parking lot. And they were all standing there, and they went, and I said, 5, 4, 3, grab that chicken off the ground and eat it. Because they're boys. I didn't say grab the chicken, I just started counting down. 5, 4. They knew when I got to 1, I was going to throw it away. They said, let me grab that chicken off the asphalt that cars drive on every day. But if you don't say to somebody, this is wrong, that's wrong, they don't know it. They don't know. You have to spell certain things out. You think, surely you must know. They say, don't call me Shirley. But they say, so God finally spelled it out. This is wrong. Don't murder. They went, what? Murder's wrong. Don't steal. What? Right? He's having to lay it down. And if you obey my law, then you'll prosper. If you don't obey my law, my statutes, my commandments, and use all these different words, then you're going to get messed up. But he says, I'll make a covenant with you. If you do all of this stuff, then I'll bless you. But what's he want them to do? Obey the law. He has to spell it out. They don't have the Spirit of God in them so that they hear his voice. So he has to write it all down. So you go to some people just don't have common sense in them. I know that I don't. And so I'll just do whatever goofy thing because something's wrong with me. And like, why are you walking on that? Oh, I didn't know I'd fall. People do stuff all the time. Aren't you shocked when we said the person died doing it? Why did they go on that mountain without rope? I don't get that. Don't they have common sense? So some people don't have a natural instinct. And we as people don't have we didn't. Once you accept Christ into your life, now he's in us to tell us verbally what to do. We often don't listen. But at least we have that opportunity because now he's in it. But since he wasn't in them, he had to write it out. He says, but there's coming a day when I'll write my law in your heart. But right now I'm writing it on these tablets and all these things. So he's talking about his law. I have to write his law down. So I don't know where we are.
33.
Shut up.
33.
Oh, Malachi. Okay, so then I will punish your transgression. Now, verse 33, nevertheless.
Nevertheless, my loving kindness I will not utterly take from him, nor allow my faithfulness to fail. My covenant I will not break, nor alter the word that was gone out of my lips.
So I'm not going to, you may mess up in your part, but I'm not going to mess up in my part. Go on.
Once I have sworn by my holiness, I will not lie to David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me.
So you got two things. Here's my law that I want you to obey, and here's my promise that I promise that his seed. Now, who's he talking about? His seed shall endure forever. Jesus. He doesn't say seeds. He's not talking about us. He's talking about Jesus. I'm actually writing this covenant to Jesus because you can't keep it. So it's actually him who I'm writing this to. Paul made that clear to us. So there's a lot of promises that we say are for us that are really for Jesus. But we get to get in on it because of him, but he wasn't writing it to us. He's writing it to Jesus. So my seed, his seed shall endure forever, talking about Jesus, and his throne as the sun before me. We don't get a throne. Okay, go on.
It shall be established forever like the moon, even like the faithful witness in the sky.
So what is it that's going to be established forever like the moon? He's talking about his law, his word, his commandment. What I have here, what I'm telling you to do, it's going to be established forever.
I'm not going to break my side of it. You may break your side of it. I'm not breaking my side of it. I know ultimately you can't fulfill it. The only person who's going to really fulfill it is Jesus. Jesus says, I didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. I'm going to fulfill this covenant. And this covenant, shall be established forever. I'm not going to go back on it. But once Jesus established it, fulfilled that part of it, then there's a new covenant where now I can write my law in your hearts. Now we can go beyond that. So he's talking about his law. His law is the moon. I am the sun, and the sun reflects unto the moon. The moon has no glory of its own, has no light of its own. It's just a reflection from the sun. And we see the moon, but we want to eventually walk in the sun, not in the night. And he uses those images on purpose, that the moon is for the nighttime, but now we want to walk in the day. And if you're still under the law and trying to follow the law to be good, you're still walking in darkness. You're still walking in darkness. Yes, sir.
Would that analogy be similar to when Jesus says, I do nothing but what I see the Father doing because the moon reflects the sun? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and he says we got to walk in the day because the night is coming when no man can walk. And so the moon was never preferable to the sun. I mean, you know, ever. Right? That's why the image of the woman, if you go back up to verse 1, she was clothed with the sun, but the moon was under her feet. The moon's under her feet. Okay, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. We know what the 12 stars are. Genesis chapter 37, verse 9.
Then he dreamed still another dream, and told it to his brothers, and said, Look, I have dreamed another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me.
How many stars altogether were in the sky?
12.
There are 12 skies in the sky. 11 were bowing down to that one. But there are 12 stars that were in the sky. And so the 12 stars in the mind of the reader of this, the 12 stars represented the 12 tribes that represented them. So I'm clothed in the sun. I've got the moon is now under my feet. And and on her head a garland, like in my crown are the 12 stars. So this represents the children of Israel. The woman is the children of Israel who are protected by God, who are at the moon, right? Not protected by the moon, but standing on the moon. And he's giving an image of how God has protected Israel all these years. So he sees this woman with the sun, the moon, and the stars. Revelation chapter 12, verse 2. Oh. Huh? No, the 11 stars bow to that one. Right, so there's 12 stars altogether, and your 11 stars are bowing to my one. He just didn't use the word one. Okay. Revelation chapter 12, verse 2.
In the beginning was a child, cried out of labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 heads on his head. Right.
So the woman, which is representing Israel and all that God has brought her through, is about to give birth to either Jesus or Martin Luther King. Right. So about to give birth. That whole line of David and all of that is going to produce the Messiah. So the dragon appears. If I can stop that woman from giving birth, then I win. I got to stop her from giving birth. Or once the child comes, I got to see if I can kill the child. So the dragon shows up. It has 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on its head. That's a good question. Let's look at Daniel chapter 7. No helping your neighbor.
After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns.
Okay, so it had 10 horns. Now, I'll just tell you in advance, the beast always is pictured in all these visions. They're attacking Israel. They're attacking what God wants to do. It has come in different form over the years, but God wants you to know it's the same beast. It's the same spirit of Antichrist. And I've used these different nations to attack Israel. So it had 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 diadems. There were 7 nations that God used to come against Israel from the time it was formed, right? So what's the first nation that captured Israel? Egypt, right? You've got the 12 tribes of Israel went down into Egypt. After they came out of Egypt, the next major group to attack it was Syria. And we were reading in Bible study how Uzzah, which king was it? Too many names. But he made a deal, we were reading about it. He made a deal. God said, show me a sign, ask for me a sign.
Yeah.
No.
No. I'm sorry. I remember too many names. I can't remember my own nephew's names. But anyway, there was a king who was making a secret deal with Syria. Whichever his name was. And yes, right, whatever. And so Syria was the next big problem. Because Israel, once they came out of Egypt, they continued to flirt with other nations, like they just never trusted God. That's why God said, ask a sign, I'll prove myself to you. He's like, no, it's okay, we got it. I'm already worked out a sign with this king. And so Syria was the next nation. After that, when they didn't listen to, they were taken into bondage by Babylon. Then there were the Medes, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. These are the 7 nations that God used to come against Israel every time they wouldn't listen. So he says this beast has had 7 heads. So, Pastor Grimm is sending us a message reminding us about the dinner today at 1 o'clock, etc. So all your phones will be ringing. Exactly. Your phone's going to ring, Ollie. Okay, so those are 7 nations that God used. Now when he got to the Romans, that one had 10 horns. That last beast has 10 horns. And we talked about it. Those were the 10 kings that were emperors basically during the time of Jesus was on the earth. During that 70-year period of judgment. When the first 35 years was Jesus is alive, and then those next 35 years until the temple was judged. There were 10 kings who reigned during 10 emperors of Rome during that time period. 3 of them died suddenly, boom, boom, boom. And then one came up, and he was the one who, and I mean like within weeks of each other, 3 emperors were dead. And then the final one came, and he's the one that sent his nephew Titus to destroy the temple. So, verse 24 says, of Daniel
The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings.
Right. So he took their place. He took the place of those 3 kings, and he's the one that judged. So this beast, this dragon, has 7 heads and 10 horns, and they know what that represents. It represents just the spirit who was coming against the church. That's why these people were always trying to stop Israel and destroy Israel. God kept allowing it as punishment, as warning. It's like if I got a big old bulldog on my leash, somebody keeps trying to come in my yard, and I'm okay, I'm sick this dog on you. You keep doing it. That's why I'm gonna sick this dog on you. My plan is not to sick a dog on you. If you just keep messing up and trying to come in my yard and take my stuff, then this dog's gonna bite you. So God didn't want to keep sending Israel into punishment with Babylon and all these stuff, but they kept messing up. So he used those nations to punish them, and then he pulled back, and hopefully they learned their lesson, but they didn't, so he'd use another nation So he knew this was going to happen 7 times. 7 different nations were going to come against him. Yes, ma'am. Oh, diadems. I'm sorry. Those are just crowns. That's just another name for crowns. Well, yeah. Okay. So Revelation. So the dragon who's coming against is that same dragon that they're familiar with. Revelation 12, verse 4 through 6.
His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born.
So we know the devil took a third of the angels and fought against Michael, the archangels. And now that he's on the earth, he's ready to fight. I couldn't stop God up in heaven. I'm going to stop him down on earth. So he's ready to devour her child as soon as it's born. Ready to kill Jesus as soon as it's born. Go on.
She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up to God on his throne.
So Jesus went on up to heaven. Go on.
Then the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God that they should keep her there 1,260 days.
3.5 years again. So the first 3.5 years is always symbolic of mercy. When Jesus came, that was God's mercy. I'm here to warn you. I'm showing up in person just to make sure you understand the judgment is coming. So 3.5 years is just symbolic. When it's either 3.5 years of mercy or 3.5 years of judgment. So the woman, after Jesus came, remember Jesus says if you're in the rooftop, fly to the wilderness. If you're in the, get out of here because judgment is coming. So the church left Jerusalem. The church left and went away, and then judgment came on Jerusalem. But by then, the gospel was already being preached in Galatia and Colossians and Thessalonica and the Philippi, right? So it's already spreading. And so they're protected from this judgment that's coming. So there's a period. 3.5 years does not mean 3.5 years. 3.5 years in this case means there's a period of God's mercy where the gospel is going to be preached, and then there's going to be a 3.5 year period of God's judgment for those who won't listen to the gospel. Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 through 9.
And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. But they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
Just reminding you again, so the angels that followed the devil, where are they?
In chains.
The angels that sinned are in chains of darkness. They are not on the earth. Demons that we are dealing with are not former angels. But the angels that followed him were kicked out. Those angels are reserved in chains of darkness. That's where they are right now. When did the devil get kicked out of heaven? When did this happen? Before the Garden of Eden, after the Garden of Eden, or is it about to happen? Before the Garden of Eden. When we see the devil, he actually has inhabited a serpent and is talking to Eve. So somewhere before all of this, he's just letting us know. I'm just reminding you. He's saying, I know that we're talking about judgment, but let me just remind you how we got started with all this stuff. So he just reminds us of the war between the church and the devil. Yes.
So if we look at this,
Right.
So if we look at it from as if this were a movie, and we already know the story of Mary getting pregnant by the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And all that. So
This is a flashback.
This is actually a movie. Like, okay, this was really going on before she even got the angel who came to her and said that she was pregnant and all
Right.
stuff. Okay.
Right, this is all just a flashback. He was telling us all about Judgment Day and what's about to happen with the devil. We just got to the point where at the end of the millennium, the devil's going to be released from the pit and he's going to lead a war. And let's flash back to how all this started. It's just a flashback. Some people who read this think, oh, this is what's going to happen, and there's going to be a big war in heaven. We're just flashing back to what already happened. We know that because in Luke chapter 10, verse 17 through 20, it says,
Then the 70 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name.
these are the 70 followers of Christ. There were 12 disciples, but there actually were 70 people who hung around. There were just 12 that he spent a lot of time with, but there really were 70 who hung around. Okay?
And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven.
So Jesus says, I already saw this. That's why we know this thing in Revelation is a flashback. I was there when Satan got kicked out of heaven. So this is not something that's going to happen. In Revelation, this is a flashback to what has already happened. He's saying, here's why the demons are subject to you. I saw Satan fall like lightning I saw him when he hit the earth. Go ahead.
Behold, I give you the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven.
Good. So, because Satan is already defeated, we have power over him. We do not have to be afraid of the devil. The devil's not a problem. The devil's not a problem. This one old minister tells this story, and I forget, one of those ministers who was preaching during the 1800s or something like that. He was having big, huge revivals everywhere, and the devil wanted to stop him, of course. And he's sitting in his room studying the Bible, and he looks, and the devil actually appears in his room, and he just says, oh, it's you. And goes back to reading, because it's like, I'm not afraid that he didn't go, oh no, the devil's here. It's like, and we're back because the devil's defeated. We have power over the devil. So we can either praise his name and worship and just talk about him. I always get 2 calls. We can just talk about the devil all the time and, oh, the devil, and just lift him up. Or we can say, oh, that's just the devil. Come out. You know, so we shouldn't be afraid of the devil. He's not a problem. That's why Jesus says, I saw him fall to heaven. That's why I've given you power over him. But don't rejoice in this, because the problem is, let's be really interesting. I'll try to be more interesting. So the problem is, people get really excited about the devil. I mean, and devils. And once they start casting out devils, they start casting devils out of everybody. I'm just by coincidence speaking about devils when you walk in. It has nothing to do with you. It just happened that way accidentally. So, he says, don't rejoice in this. Don't get all excited about that you have power of the Spirit and turn that into religion, which people do. They just find devils everywhere. They will cast devils out of their tennis shoes and out of they just cast devils out of everything. Because he says you can get too excited about the devil. Like that can become a thing. Don't. He's defeated. So don't rejoice in this. If you're going to get excited about it, then get excited that your names are in the book of life. Don't be excited about the devil and make him that a big deal. Okay. In John chapter 12, verse 31, however, it says,
Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. And I am lifted up from the earth and draw all peoples to myself. This he said, signifying by what death he would die.
So Jesus is about to go to the cross, and he says, now is the judgment of the world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. What does that mean? Was the devil cast out of the world? Young people? Aiden, and will you come just have a seat? Brothers and sisters, shoving each other. I would never do that. That close to my sister. Not be able to run. Okay, so what does it mean now the ruler of this world will be cast out? Anybody who thinks they might know, run the last page. Was the devil cast out of the world, or?
No, it's
Cast out of heaven?
the power is given to the believers, in Christ, to be able to have power over the things. So he no longer has power over believers, he no longer has power over we have power through Christ stop the power of the enemy.
So we think something has changed. Now, this is it. That's good. This is it. Yes, sir?
To me, it means that when Jesus ascended into heaven, he took the keys to death and hell with him. So he unlocked what was tied up down there, and there's mercy again. Those souls that were in chains had more chains.
Okay, but what does it mean now, the rule of this world? Because you're talking generally about what happened when Jesus ascended, but now the rule of this world will be cast out. I just want to tell you, this is a technical, a judicial term. I'll just keep going. When a judge sentences you, you're standing before him and says, now you got to get out of here, send him out to jail. Now the judgment has come. That's the same, it's a legal term that Jesus is using. Now the devil has now been, his power has been shortened, which is what you were saying. And he's on his way to jail. Now the rule of this world has been cast out. Sentence has been passed on him now. So the way that the devil was ruling at a certain point, he can no longer do that anymore because now that Jesus has come and died on the cross, we have power over him now. They didn't have power over the devil before this time. But now we do. So his time is short. He's on that last mile, the green mile. He's on his way. He's being sentenced, and he's on his way to prison. He's on his way to his final judgment. Now that I've come to the cross, he's on his way to his final judgment. He's been sentenced, would be another translation for this.
Dead man walking.
Okay? And he says, and if I'm lifted up, which literally means if I'm put on the cross, why'd I put a T on it? If I'm put on the cross and lifted up, then that's the signal that his punishment has begun. I'll give it. You'll tumble over, and then I'll laugh. So, he's saying, I'm lifted up if I put him on the cross. And so when we say lift him up, we're saying put him on the cross, which is okay. He's saying if you put me on the cross in front of everybody, he's not on the cross anymore. But if you show people that I've been on the cross, that's the signal for your freedom. You're free now. I died for you. I took your place. My blood was shed, so the ultimate price has been paid. So lift me up, put me on the cross, let everybody know that the price is paid. Then I'll draw everybody to me. And he says this, he's talking about his death. So when we say lift him up, we use the phrase like praise him. But we're saying let people know about the cross. Lift him up, put him on the cross, and let people know about the cross and that the price has been paid. Now once we get him, then let people know that he's off the cross. Once they become Christians, let people know there's more to it. But first, you got to let them know about the cross and what all that means. Okay, Matthew 8, verse 29. So he said, let's read this.
And suddenly they cried out, saying, "What have we to do with you, Jesus, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?"
Have you come to torment us before? These are demons saying, before the time. What does that mean? Before what time? Like, Jesus, you're supposed to torment us at 3. It's only 2:15. What time are they talking about? You've come to torment us before the time of judgment. We get to stay here, we demons, because we're not angels. We used to live here before Adam and Eve got here. And if you missed those Sunday school classes, they'll be repeated, I'm sure. So, we lived in this area before Adam and Eve got here. We get to stay here, and then we know the judgment's coming. We know what our punishment was for following. So we're the spirits of those dead that was here before when Satan fell and he shook the nations. We get to stay here, but we know the time is coming when we will actually join the angels in chains of darkness. But we get to stay here right now. So that's why they said, do not send us out of this country. We want to stay here. So he sent them into the pigs. And then the pig said, I don't want demons in me. And so they went and killed themselves. There are people who, they like demons in them. And the demons say, let's go to church today. They go, yeah, that'd be a good place to go. So I can really act up. So humans, they don't mind demons in them, apparently. But the pigs didn't want the demons, so that's why they killed themselves. And then but the demons got to stay in that country. They got to stay, and there's a time coming. So Jesus says, now is the time that I have sentenced him. Now the ruler of this world has been judged. So he's on his way to those chains. But there's a time coming, and Revelations is going to get back to it. The Revelations is doing a flashback, just reminding us of all that happened when the devil's going to finally be judged. And then we won't have to worry about this anymore. So let's just read this last part, Revelations 10 through 12.
Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea.
Okay, so I've explained. So they did not love their lives to the death. So if you love your life, you're never going to give it up and take Christ's life. People just love, oh, I love life. And that's going to be the problem. You got to give up your life and take on his. If you love your life, okay, you can hold on to it, but that life is going to hell. Or you can let go of your life and the flesh and all of the stuff you do, and you can grab onto Jesus and live for eternity with him. Those are the choices. So he says, these people did not love their lives to the death. They didn't hold on to their life. They wanted Christ's life. Then he says, you who dwell, woe to the inhabitants of the land and the sea. That's the land. He says the earth. The country earth just knows it means the land. The land and the sea. Now nobody, who lives in the sea? Nobody. So no, he's talking about the sea is people, the Gentiles. So the inhabitants of the land is always talking about Israel. The sea is always talking about the Gentiles. So you inhabitants of the land and the sea. They lived, this was written in, this is talking about the land. So whenever I say, and right here, I either mean Good Shepherd or I mean LA. Right? When they say the land, they always meant Israel. And the sea always represented the Gentiles. There aren't people who live in the sea. Right? So you inhabitants of the land and the sea, whether you are part of Israel or everywhere else, woe to you if you are still embracing your life. Go on, for the devil.
For the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time.
Right. So now his time is short. He's already walking that last mile. I got a short time, so he's going to act up. He's going to cut up. He doesn't have much time left. So this was just a flashback to remind us of what the devil's about to do. And now we're starting the next 7 judgments. The next 7 judgments, and God's going to get even more specific about what's going on in the last days with the devil. He just simply flashed back for a minute to explain us, this is why the devil's going to really go crazy. This is why you have to be careful, because he's going to get into the specifics now about how we can be deceived, how people will be deceived when the Antichrist comes, and why they're going to follow him instead of Jesus. And there'll be believers, there'll be all kinds of people who think they're believers, who are going to get swept up in the words of the Antichrist, and they're going to miss Jesus. So he's